Tonight, we see the messages between Denver police officers joking about going to a migrant shelter for target practice.
Just dark humor that got taken out of context.
Okay.
A dry day and a wildfire that shut down an interstate for a while. Small businesses struggle to make it through repeated power outages while Excel tries to prevent wildfires.
For a small business like us, that's, our rent.
An Aurora City leader targets a nonprofit, calling them a communist group without evidence, because they challenged her claims about the extent of gang activity in the city. And Denver's proposed budget deeply cuts migrant funding as the flow from the southern border slows to a trickle. That's tonight on Next. 3 Denver police officers have lost their jobs after joking about going to migrant shelters for target practice. Tonight, Kelly Rinke from our 9 Investigates team got a hold of their texts on an encrypted app and video of those officers trying to explain themselves.
This is just about a text thread and some questions about that.
You're watching an investigation into 3 Denver police officers.
We're all stressed out and we're just joking around, venting.
A joke, one cop said, that eventually cost them their jobs. The city blurred the officers' faces, an interview shared with 9 News, as an investigator asked about this text thread. Megan Joy sent a message to officers in her academy class, making plans to go shooting tomorrow. Does anyone want to tag along? Rodrigo Bercerto suggests, should go to the migrant hotel on 6th and Federal and shoot them there, LOL. Plenty of targets in there. Megan responds with a laughing emoji. Scott Persiciti asks, when we doing this? Those 3 officers are joking about going to shelters full of migrants for target practice.
I never expected it or wanted it to be anything more than just a couple laughs.
Okay.
I'm sorry that I said that out. I'm remorseful and I'm ashamed about it.
That's Bercerto, the one who said the newcomer hotel had plenty of targets.
I come from a military background. We deal with our stress and our, stressful situations, and we cope by dark humor.
His face is blurred in this interview, but 9 News talked to him the year before. He was a recruit who participated in a program to expose new officers to Denver's diverse community.
Not only make me a better cop, but make me a better resident for Denver. The history of Denver, it's amazing.
Not sure if there's anything else that I can do. I'm going to take classes.
He tried to keep his job, but 2 weeks after these interviews, the department fired them, including Persiciti, who told a classmate, don't be a snitch, after someone warned about this getting in the hands of the public.
I've talked to Rigo about it and Megan. We were just expressing frustration with it. It was like we were just kidding. I hope that nothing happens from this, from a silly joke, essentially.
DPD learned about this from a classmate of theirs who resigned. It was reported to them after his resignation. Several officers left that group chat after these messages were shared. Kyle.
So in terms of what happens other than just the 3 fired officers, right, in terms of the other ones?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we had dozens of officers, maybe more than 40 that were in this group chat. It sounds like several of them left after these messages were shared. The department says that those officers are going through additional training as well. All right, Kelly Rinke, thank you very much. A wildfire in Morgan County shut down I-76 in both directions today. It's back open now. At last check, that fire west of Wiggins had burned about 900 acres. Firefighters say it was actually a fire that flared up yesterday, then got going again today. A bunch of small fires popped up across the metro area today. Much of the state's under a red flag warning because it is so hot and dry and windy. Meteorologist Lauren Robinson's along, and is that going to continue through tomorrow on into the weekend?
Well, we will see a bit of a better situation as we go into the day tomorrow, but this current red flag alert is in effect until 8 o'clock this evening, and you can see it does take up a good portion of Colorado, including most of the Front Range and Eastern Plains. So we will continue to watch for very dry conditions with relative humidity down to around 10 to 12%. We're also going to watch for those winds to be pretty gusty here. We could see them up to around 40 to 45 miles per hour under this alert. Through the rest of the evening, we will see those wind speeds starting to calm down. Those temperatures will start to cool, of course, as well. But this afternoon, we did make it to 93 degrees out at DIA, which is just 1 degree short of meeting our current record of 94 degrees last set on this day in 1911. So it was very hot out there, well above our seasonal highs for this time of year. Right now, temperatures across the Front Range and Eastern Plains, most of us in the 80s, but we're still sitting at 90 degrees at DIA. We're also going to continue to monitor the these winds now mostly coming in between 20 to 30 miles per hour. We're going to wait for those winds to continue to calm down. That will help the fire situation out there. Now, as we zoom in to Colorado here, we're nice and clear, but we will continue to watch for that wildfire smoke across the state over the next few days, really intensifying throughout the day tomorrow. So moving ahead through the next few days, we're going to see those temperatures go up and down a bit, but mostly staying out of the 90s.
Lauren, thank you. Xcel warned some customers they may lose power in northwestern Colorado today due to predicted winds. Trouble ended up being on the Front Range. We saw some outages reported in Erie, Lafayette, Boulder. Xcel says it was the wind causing issues with equipment. It was not preemptive blackouts. Xcel says it has not had any of those today. Now, whatever you might save on power costs during an outage can easily be wiped out in expenses and hassle if you, say, lose refrigerated or frozen food, and then real risk for people if you're relying on power for medical equipment. Our Marshall Zallinger takes us to Boulder for a look at the impact on small business.
Candlelights add ambiance to a restaurant, except when they're needed to see to clean the kitchen because of an unplanned power outage.
We've experienced a series of extended power outages. No heads up.
Dakota Seufer is the chef and owner of Cafe Aeon on the Hill in Boulder.
Additionally, they've been happening on Friday evening. Completely lost all of our business.
For a restaurant that relies on evening customers, that means lost revenue. Xcel does have a claims process, but only if Xcel is negligent and also if insurance does not cover the loss.
Unfortunately, ours does not, and I'm not aware of really any insurance that is going to cover a loss for, hours versus weeks. We weren't shut down for weeks, but it leaves us in a really tough spot.
Seufer has submitted 2 claims to Xcel for losses.
I believe it was $7,000 or $8,000 for loss of sales, plus employees lost out, loss of wages.
He was denied one so far and had an email conversation with an Xcel claims investigator. One of those replies from Xcel said, anytime there is high winds and heat, the system goes into wildfire safety settings to not start any fires should a power line get blown off a pole. I know that can be very frustrating, but it is necessary to prevent widespread damages.
The solution is not just to leave the system on heightened alert when the conditions don't dictate that. When it's raining and it's not windy and it's not 103 degrees, there's no reason for it.
The criteria for Xcel to even be responsible for a claim is negligence. Defining that can be the difference between a denial and perhaps getting $7,000 to $8,000.
Not millions, but it's very meaningful to a small business.
I asked Xcel for some data today. Success rates, denial rates of claims submitted. Really, what are your chances of winning and seeing some money? A spokesman worked on it today, Kyle, but was unable to get me anything, at least today.
I feel like that really is a fair question that people still want an answer to, which is if I've gone through the hassle of the outage, the impact on my business, if I'm going to go through the hassle of the claim, I want to know if I have some kind of probability of success.
Yeah, what's my hitting percentage?
Yeah.
Am I striking out 9 out of 10 times or 10 out of 10 times?
Sure.
Or is it like, hey, if you didn't realize you could submit a claim, you got a real good chance of getting paid no matter what?
Absolutely. All right. Well, please follow up. Thank you, Marshall. The impact of Venezuelan gang activity in Aurora and the highly political debate around it is now impacting a nonprofit, which is being smeared as a communist group after it challenged a conservative councilwoman's version of events. The nonprofit East Colfax Community Collective organized a rally at a troubled apartment complex on September 3rd. People who said that they lived there told the media that day that they don't worry about gangs as much as they're concerned about their absentee landlord and white supremacist threats that have come in following intense conservative media coverage of the Tren de Aragua gang in Aurora. That led Councilwoman Danielle Jurinsky to target the nonprofit on talk radio.
This communist group that is along the Colfax corridor, they're called East Colfax Community Collective. They went out and propped up the folks that are living there, wrote signs for them, and propped them up out there saying, there's no gangs here.
The same day that Councilwoman Jurinsky called this nonprofit communist, the same smear appeared on the fringe conspiracy website InfoWars. We looked around and can't figure out where else this would be coming from. That nonprofit, which describes itself as a group of local business leaders and residents who are fighting displacement, got a city grant by a unanimous vote of the conservative majority Aurora City Council last year. I should say Drinsky was absent the day of that vote, but then she later voted not to reconsider the grant to the nonprofit. We asked Drinsky for evidence of this communist claim. She didn't have any. She said that she thought the nonprofit referred to itself as communist, but couldn't say when or where that happened. In a statement, the co-founder of the nonprofit said, quote, "Throughout the history of the United States, social justice organizations advocating for housing, human and economic rights have been labeled as communist as means to attempt to silence our voices in the pursuit of justice for our families." The co-founder of the nonprofit said that Aurora City Council, rather than attacking residents and nonprofits, should instead focus on improving conditions at the city's apartment complexes. A Mountain View Town Council member accused of shooting a teenager in the face is out of jail tonight. That teenager told investigators that he and a friend were just trying to ask permission to take homecoming photos at a scenic property in Conifer. They hopped that fence to go to the front door and ask. They could not find the homeowner, so they went back to their cars to write a note asking. Investigators say that's when the homeowner's boyfriend, Brent Metz, pulled up next to them. Investigators say Metz fired his gun, hitting the 17-year-old in the face. The teenager survived and is in the hospital. Our legal analyst, Scott Robinson, says even trespassing does not justify a shooting in Colorado.
If it was an illegal entry and you have any belief that's reasonable that they might commit another crime, you can use deadly force. That's the Make My Day law. But there's no Make My Day law for your driveway or the area outside of your home.
Again, Colorado's Make My Day law, that applies to deadly force against a home intruder. The council member's facing a number of charges, including assault and a weapons count. Denver's new budget proposal is out with its smallest spending increase in years and a sharp drop in spending for migrants. The community pushback paid off. A pipeline company drops its expansion plans next to an elementary school. For the first time in years, the city of Denver will not grow the size of government next year in terms of jobs. Instead, Mayor Mike Johnston announced today that 200 open positions won't be filled in next year's budget. Our Evan Krugel looks at where those cuts could happen.
Impact more than 80% reduction.
$260 million.
119 of these this year.
A press conference about a budget.
We're proposing $12 million for next year.
Can include a lot of numbers.
Welcome back to Econ 101.
But at Mayor Mike Johnston's 2025 budget reveal, there was one number that stood out. The number of full-time city jobs being cut in Denver.
We will go from what has historically been about a 200 FTE per year increase in the city size every year. 12 will be close to a 200 FTE decrease in this year for the first time in almost 15 years. Key in that, there are not furloughs, there are not layoffs.
Instead, Johnston says 200 open positions will not be filled as the city deals with economic uncertainty.
What you will see overall is that this budget reduces the size of government and reduces the growth of government for the first time in 15 years, other than the one-year aberration of the pandemic.
Those cuts will come from departments citywide, but there's one area that will not see reductions.
The short answer is they come from all parts of the city, with the exception of they do not come from uniformed officers.
Chief Ron Thomas expressed support for the budget after his department had to cut about 2% of its budget this year to deal with the migrant crisis.
Well, I'm encouraged. I'm encouraged that the mayor continues to invest in public safety. Obviously, the investment in additional officers on the street, additional investments in things that I think that are going to keep neighborhoods safe. And so certainly we have seen crime go down, and I think that we are on a pathway for that to continue to occur.
Johnston's budget calls for the city to hire 168 new police officers. That would be a net increase of more than 100 when you factor in officers who retire each year. One other big note from that announcement today, the city planning to spend just $12.5 million on migrant aid next year. That's down from $90 million that Johnston had budgeted for this year. Kyle.
And obviously a lot of that is incumbent on conditions at the southern border, right, in terms of how many people are coming to the community. In the last wave, at the very end, Denver took a hard line saying we are out of resources, but certainly we're going to have to see what actually happens on the ground next year.
Less people coming here, and the city has scaled back on those resources to the point where they actually had some leftover money in this year's budget that should go towards other things in the city's budget next year.
Evan Krugel, thank you. So after pushback from neighbors and environmentalists, a pipeline company is ditching its plans to expand storage next to an elementary school in Commerce City. We told you about this plan on Monday. Magellan Pipeline Company has a property on Kimberly Street across from DuPont Elementary. They are going to add 5 more gasoline tanks, bringing their total to 25 tanks on the property. Teachers and families had concerns about the long-term health impacts related to exposure to toxic chemicals. The company was planning to hold a public comment session next week, but pulled the expansion this week. Well, the ink is dry on the deal to end mining above Crested Butte, and all it took was 5 decades of work. Another wolf brought to Colorado has died. It is the 3rd death that CPW has reported since the agency turned loose 10 wolves on the western slope last year. Wildlife workers say they found the dead male in Grand County on Tuesday. The first wolf died during the spring, likely killed by a mountain lion. Another wolf died earlier this month. CPW captured a group of wolves suspected of killing livestock, and wildlife workers say one of those wolves came in injured and did not survive. CPW hasn't said how that 3rd wolf died. Environmentalists in Crested Butte are celebrating a big win after decades of fighting against local mining operations. A mining company has signed off on a deal that's going to protect thousands of acres of mountain and ranch land. Mount Evans, better known as the Red Lady near Crested Butte, has been the site of molybdenum mining since the late 70s. Town leaders and conservationists have spent years challenging the mining rights. They didn't have much success until new owners took over the operation in 2016. Those new owners spent years putting together a massive land swap, which will require them to turn over hundreds of acres to the Forest Service. In exchange, the Forest Service will give up hundreds of acres where the molybdenum mining company already has a water treatment facility. This land is already covered by a federal deal that stops new molybdenum mining and energy development for the next 20 years. Now, this is a total permanent withdrawal with this fresh agreement. The mining company officially signed off on the deal at the end of August. The community is actually going to throw a big party next month. We're back with your feedback that sometimes comes out of nowhere. That's next. It's a sign that a gas station in Denver is singed, but still smiling. So there's a fire at the Conoco on 6th and University, so now they've changed the sign to read, "Crispy at edges, but not done yet." The building is in fact a bit crispy, but it's still standing. This fire was back in August. Not sure when they're going to be able to turn the pumps back on, but you can tell they're in it for the long game. If you see a sign that makes you look twice, send it our way. Email next@9news.com. Thoughtful feedback tonight from Ross in Loveland. A suggestion for a new segment on Next. He says it should be called Chill Colorado. Ross writes, hotheads shooting teenagers, allegedly responsible political officials tarring nonprofits with inflammatory and unsubstantiated labels. Let's just chill Colorado. I kind of like that idea, Ross. I also think, though, that maybe we can all examine our own roles in what leads to an environment where people need to chill. So for us in the media, we should consider, are we rewarding inflammatory political rhetoric with positive attention, or even just enabling it through turning our attention elsewhere, or are we directly calling it out? Are we stoking fear of our neighbors so that people are afraid of their shadows and horrible things happen, like the shooting of a teenager? Or are we presenting a more realistic picture of the world around us? That's what we'll think about on our end.